I think it's very important for practice to have a good website that links to your social media accounts. I think lots of patients use the web, especially search engines like Google, to find out which doctors specialize in which procedures and which is the right practice for them. I oftentimes joke with patients when I ask them who sent you, and they say I found you on the internet, that it's Dr. Google who sent them. So I think it's very important to have a strong web presence. Having a functional website may not be enough, just having presence on the web. It's also maybe important to do things like search engine optimization, and you have to really find out in your area what are the keywords to bring the patients that you want into your practice. Now, some people who are in the web business have mentioned that search engine optimization may be dead. So instead, what you may want to do is pay Google for Google AdWords and things like that. But I would recommend having somebody who knows what they're doing, specifically targeting your area, to help you bring your website to the forefront. So for example, if somebody Googles skin cancer, your location, your website comes up, or if they Google Fraxel, your location, your website comes up. It's also very important to have a social media presence. So things like Facebook, Twitter, and other social websites are very important. These used to be free vehicles where you could advertise your practice, or really let your followers, your patients, know sort of your specials, or what you're interested in, or what's new and hot in dermatology. But it's becoming more and more difficult to use these services for free, just like it's more and more difficult to get your website up to the highest rank online. So a lot of practices are now having to pay Facebook, and Twitter is probably trending the same way, to really put your thoughts or your web presence on the forefront. Again, I think it's important to work with somebody who knows what they're doing in this arena to get your practice sort of to the level where you want it to be. But I think in general terms, without a good website that has videos and content and maybe a blog, a place for questions and answers from your patients, linked to a media page, I think it's really important to have all of these things for your practice. As we know, being HIPAA compliant is very important. So if you have a website, for example, if you're posting pictures of before and after cosmetic procedures, or you're telling stories about a patient experience, I think it's very important to have written consent from your patients. And what I do, I actually go a step beyond. I actually ask the patients, after they've signed the consent, I tell them that I'm going to put your pictures on my website if that's okay. And I sometimes send them the photos, the before and after, and just get them to send me an email back saying, yes, I approve this is okay with me. I think it's also very important to respect patient privacy. So if a patient says, no, I had a great result, but I don't want any of my friends to know that I had all this work done, it's important to say, okay, that's fine, your photos are just going to be used for your medical record, and that's it. I also think it's very important to keep your personal web life, so your Facebook account, your Twitter account, your LinkedIn account, separate from your practice account. Because you don't necessarily want to have pictures of whatever it is that you were doing on vacation being available to your patient. So if a patient tries to friend me on my personal Facebook page, I always just send a quick reply saying, I'm sorry, but I cannot friend you on my personal page. If you want to follow my practice, that's fine. There's a practice Facebook page for that. So I think it is very important to have a strictly professional web presence and then a strictly personal web presence. And having said that, I also think that it's very important that what you post on the internet for your personal stuff is still very professional, because you are a physician, you're a healthcare provider, so you want to present yourself as somebody who's strictly a professional. So just in case those two worlds do happen to meet. I think it's very important to have a professionally designed website. I think there's lots of services that offer you to do your website yourself, but a trained eye could definitely tell the difference in something you've done yourself, unless you also happen to be a web designer and a physician, and somebody who's a professional who does this for a living. So I think having a professionally designed website is important. That same company or person who designs your website can also do things like being a webmaster. They can post videos for your website. The person who helps me with my website can also help edit and post blogs if needed. But all those other things, personally, I do myself. So if I want to write a blog, I get on my website and I write a blog. Tweeting and Facebook posts is all something that I do myself. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have somebody do it in your practice, but I think it's very important that that person who is going to post on your behalf knows exactly what it is that they're talking about, because a lot of times they'll post something and they may not have as deep of an understanding as you have of the medical procedure or the cosmetic procedure that you're talking about, and it may not look professional. So one of the ways to get around that is to just write the content and let someone else post it online. But really the bear of the work is writing the content. Once you've written the content, actually posting it is pretty easy, and there are certain website services that allow you to just, with a few clicks of a button, to post your blog and your thoughts online. So you just have to make sure your website is done the right way. I think if you're going to invest your time to post things online via your website or Twitter or Facebook, I think it's important that it's good medical information. So not to copy and paste what someone else has maybe written about, but really to create your own content. Not only is that important for patient education and communicating with your patients, but it's also important because original content is going to drive your website sort of to a higher level on the search engines. And your patients are going to know if something is just rehashed or just something that you're basically recycling, or it's really your thoughts, because once they get to know you, they're going to know sort of where you live and sort of what kind of thoughts you usually have. So I think it's important that all the information that's on your website and your social media is good information that's medically vetted. I think a lot of physicians get into the habit of just posting things, and they may not have any sort of value or any science behind them. So I think it's really important that the things that you post, the content that you're creating, actually creates some value to your patients, because your patients could go to a million different websites. So why are they going to come to your website? They're going to come because they're going to get your honest opinion, something that may be scientifically proven or scientifically backed, and something that's really good information as opposed to just something that they could get on another website. I think it's very difficult to measure exactly what is the cost effectiveness of having a social media or a web presence. I think it's hard to say whether or not the websites actually drive patients to your practice. So what I do is when I have a new patient, I always ask the patients if they've seen our website, how did they find us, who sent them. So if it's a referring doc or a family member, I always ask, well, have you been on the web to check out my website and see sort of what the practice is about and what kind of services are offered. But I do think it's very hard to put a measurement on it as far as cost and profit and revenue. But I do think it's very important to have a website and have social media presence, because I think if you don't have those things, that might actually cost you more, because if patients can't find you, they can't find the information, they can't find who you are and what you're all about, I think maybe they're going to be less likely to come and see you in your practice. In conclusion, I think it's really important to have a strong web presence with a well-designed, well-functioning website that creates original, good content with links to your social media pages that you may run, such as Facebook and Twitter.